Hello, this is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. This is a mini-series on Off Leash called Wildly Unconventional because we're trying to capture the essence of the new Trump era in major conflicts around the world especially. And Eric, you know, in May of 2015, I went to New York, had a meeting in Trump Tower because I was looking for something wildly unconventional because Washington was so corrupt, so broken. Democrats, Republicans, they loved war, they loved overspending, they loved sticking it to the little guy. And of course, you know, Trump won in 2016. Famously, he had horrible personnel choices and was a captive of the establishment, you know, through much of that first term, and backfired on him. Not today. In fact, every one of his cabinet picks is on the team. Everybody is singing off the same song sheet in this new Trump era. So I wanted to focus on how wildly unconventional this is because Washington, D.C., the establishment is completely flipped on its head. They can't keep up with him with this, you know, lightning pace that he's got going on. And everything is wildly unconventional. So let's start with Israel as a part of this series. And tragically, the latest development, of course, is how Hamas decided to parade around coffins on their stage and our propaganda tour, including the coffins containing the remains of two babies, one 9-year-old and a 4-year-old, one 9-month-old and a 4-year-old, the Bibas boys, beautiful little redheaded kids. Hamas tried to claim that they were killed through an Israeli airstrike. Forensic shows, no. They were murdered by Hamas. And I see this as potentially the tipping point where Donald Trump says enough. And his unconventional approach is going to be, yeah, I don't just talk. I'm not a politician. I take action. Let me get your initial reaction to that development.
Mark, I read a lot of military history, and I know of no other conflict where one side kept bodies as hostages. I visited Israel in early January before Trump took over, and there was 100 hostages yet. They figured about 64 of them were alive. 36 they figured were dead. But the idea of keeping kids' bodies as hostages is unprecedented and a new low in warfare.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And the mother of these boys, by the way, was also killed. And they were believed to have been killed early after the October 7th attack. So 4 coffins were returned, 2 with the boys, 1 allegedly with the mom, and then 1 was an activist, an older activist. After forensics, they determined, no, that wasn't the mom in that coffin. It was actually a woman from Gaza whose remains were in that box. So not only did they lie about the death of these boys, but they haven't returned the mother also.
But to me, it's a great example of never let the decision go to the judges in a boxing match. And this is obviously way more than a boxing match, but it's, as we've said before, if they had followed some different strategies, I think they could have finished the Gaza debacle sooner militarily. But the barbarity of Hamas having a ceremony, a parade, a celebration, when they're, you know, playing the festive music as these bodies are returned, it's a good look at Hamas.
Yeah, and they had an image of
not a good look of Hamas,
right.
But it's a let you see what your enemy really is.
Right, they're revealing themselves. Well, and they had an image of Netanyahu on the back of the stage with, you know, blood all over him, again claiming that he was responsible for the deaths of these hostages. But it's one more insult, I think, that's going to be the tipping point in this scenario, this ceasefire hostage release scenario that's been taking place. You know, the problem, of course, is you still have lives in the balance. There's still an American hostage who's there, Eden Alexander, who was IDF, but he's got joint citizenship, dual citizenship. So those lives hang in the balance. But even our hostage negotiator, our special envoy for hostages, Adam Bowler, said, this now could be what leads to total annihilation unless they release all the hostages. I mean, President Trump even said himself, it's time to release all of them. I think he's lost his patience now with this drib and drab of releases, Donald Trump's words. And now I think we're going to see a return to hostilities. I don't see any other way at this point.
He has certainly laid out some deadlines, and Hamas has continually violated them, and they remain defiant, unrepentant, and unchanging in their mission.
Yeah, well, and fascinating to me that Eden Alexander's father even spoke in support of the president after he warned them, you're going to face total annihilation. All hell will break out if you do not release all the hostages. I was very impressed by that. So, we'll see what moves forward with this. But interestingly, again,
I come back to in the 80s, there were some Russian diplomats' families that were taken hostage in Lebanon. And in comparison to the U.S. hostages that were taken, where we negotiated for months and months and months, eventually they were released. In the case of the Russians, there were certain Hezbollah leadership family members that were taken as a counteraction by the KGB, and they started mailing back parts, and immediately all Russian hostages were released.
Right.
They only understand force, maximum force in every aspect of their being. So whether those are Hamas leadership and families living in Qatar or in Turkey or wherever they may be, that's what they understand.
Right. And also the old axiom that says you can't negotiate with terrorists, right? And that's what we're in the middle of. We're still negotiating with these terrorists.
I remember, yes, I mean, even as early as during Teddy Roosevelt's presidency, there was a U.S. emissary that was taken hostage in Arabia, shocker. And of course, no instant communications then, but there was a telegraph. And Teddy Roosevelt sent a message in the clear to the commander of the Mediterranean forces, effectively CENTCOM back then. And he said, in 2 weeks, I expect to receive one of the two messages, that our diplomat is returned safely, or that the entire tribe holding him has been annihilated.
Right. It's black and white.
Yes.
Right.
Some things don't change.
And right now we are in the middle of muddy gray. And it's got to change quickly because we have a wildly unconventional president. He's not going to take it for long. Interestingly, what's wildly unconventional is Donald Trump's suggestion that the U.S. take command of Gaza, we redevelop it, and that neighboring countries take these Arabs from Gaza and create a new home for them, at least temporarily, while Gaza is redeveloped. Of course, Europeans' heads were exploding. Even people in the Middle East, they can't. I mean, Donald Trump's brilliant when he comes to this because he gets everybody talking, and eventually we make progress. Whereas Washington politicians, they just talk, and there's never any action. President Sisi from Egypt delivered a speech, and he said, "Well, here's what we want to do. We want $20 billion from the UAE. We want $20 billion from the Saudis, and there's going to be no oceanfront hotels. It's just going to be very, very basic. That we'll redevelop it, ourselves." And notably, he said the Palestinian Authority should take command of Gaza as the ruling governing body. Let me get your reaction.
A lot more corruption to put the Palestinian Authority back in charge because they have almost as many issues as Hamas does. Look, it is a mess. I really hope Trump is not serious about the U.S. taking possession and trying to govern Gaza, but it is a constant circle of the same corruption, the same nonsense that got us there, and ultimately, I don't think it should be the United States' problem.
Right.
It is not our territory.
Yeah.
Israel is a friend. It is not a protectorate. It is definitely not the 51st state. It is ultimately for them to solve. We have a citizen that's hostage, resolve that. But I take a bit more of a America first approach on this, that it's their neighborhood, fix their neighborhood.
Right. But we understand Trump's style. We understand the art of the deal. You know, what did he do? He got a reaction out of everybody. He now has the president of Egypt talking about them taking some level of responsibility, Arab nations taking some level of responsibility. Forget about the Palestinian Authority. That's a deal killer. Forget it. It'll never happen, right? But now he's got, you know, an Arab leader challenging other Arab leaders to step up and put their money where their mouth is. That wouldn't have happened if Donald Trump hadn't talked about taking command of it.
True, exactly. There's a lot of space in the Sinai Peninsula to redevelop that as well, or to actually develop it. It's never been developed. Egypt continues to lose $800 million a month from the Suez being closed, and no one's actually solved the Houthi problem. We'll see what Trump does on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, what's interesting is I think Netanyahu's popularity has sort of returned and strengthened, and gradually over the course of time, I think that this using hostages as props, dead hostages as props by Hamas, is going to be a total game changer. I think they will have pushed it too far. And it's time to flood the region of every last member of Hamas.
They should have flooded the entire Gaza with water,
Literally.
and you never would have had this problem.
Literally, right. Is it too late?
I guess if there's still areas that they think they're underground, no time like the present than to bring the water.
Yeah, because all we hear about is how the region has been leveled. All of Gaza, it's basically uninhabitable at this point. And so I just think Donald Trump is wildly unconventional. He's now got Arab nations talking about taking some responsibility for Gaza, which they should have done a long time ago, instead of Hamas running wild. And that, we see a real shift in the dialogue. And that's exactly what Trump wanted to do.
And if he can shift the dialogue to the GCC taking care of it with Israel, fantastic, because it is ultimately not the United States' responsibility.
So let's play that out. Let's play out a scenario. What do you think is workable? How do you think that they can actually take command of the situation? Will they be united around the idea of eliminating Hamas completely?
Yes, because I don't think the Saudi or the Emirati leadership can countenance dealing with Hamas as a terrorist organization, a proxy of Iran.
Right. And so, all right. So, and that's what Donald Trump did in his first trip internationally in May of 2017. He went and spoke to a gathering of Arab nations, and he said, let's stop focusing on what divides us. Let's focus on what unites us, which is none of us can tolerate a nuclear Iran. And so I think this is the same arrangement. Yep. Basically, it all leads back to Iran. And so if this is what unites us, is holding off from a nuclear Iran, then everybody's got to step up.
And the surrogacy of Hamas or the Houthis continues to benefit Iran, which gives them time to finish their nuclear program. Because a nuclear Iran now is a absolute game changer, a catalyst in the region, because now they can hold the region hostage.
Okay, but what is different in the last several months is Iran is now in a weakened position, relatively speaking. Where Hezbollah, obviously,
yeah, sure,
right?
Yeah, but so their surrogates have taken the hit, but what's not being hit is their nuclear program, and it gives them the means, and they're selling oil, and they can spend that money, and they can finish a nuclear program.
Okay.
If they imagine the game changer for them to counter with now is to clack off a nuclear test somewhere in the Iranian desert and say, okay, we're in the nuclear club. What are you going to do now?
Okay. I don't think it will take that for Trump to start to ratchet pressure onto Iran and turn his focus onto, does he negotiate a deal with them? Does he basically just turn sanctions on and just squeeze them? What do you think? What are the options moving ahead with his deal with Iran?
Certainly sanctions, maybe some covert action, although I don't think there's any appetite at the CIA, which has still largely been castrated from the previous years of neglect. And I don't see him wanting to do some massive military endeavor into Iran. So it's maybe the surrogacy and the distraction that they want to generate in Gaza and in the Red Sea is working. So again, Iranians are very deliberate people. It's a society that puts 1,000 stitches into a square inch of a rug. So they think very, very deliberately, and not in our Western news cycle or quarterly reporting of a corporation.
Okay, let's exit with this. Just look ahead and let me know, do you believe now if the rest of these hostages are not delivered promptly, because we have phase 2 of this ceasefire negotiation is about to commence. We're wrapping up phase 1. Phase 2 has to be renegotiated altogether. Hamas, by the way, made the first step towards phase 2. They stepped forward and said, let's start talking right now for phase 2. So, are we going to continue to be patient? What's your prediction?
I'd say I would predict that there's a clock set with a deadline about to expire, with a go time for some kind of special operations, Israeli special operations, to go try to rescue the rest of the hostages.
That's it. Only here on Off Leash do you hear this kind of insight, and particularly about the wildly unconventional era we are in now under the leadership of Donald Trump. This is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Until next time.